maybe with 10 gigawatts of compute, AI would be able to cure cancer. It's kind of them saying, here's some magic beans. Give us all of the power now, and maybe we'll cure cancer.
But they're not magic beans, right? Because they're actually doing useful work already.
Welcome to the AI Argument.
Hello and welcome to the AI Argument with myself, Justin Collery, and the ever-frightened Frank Prendergast. Frank, it's our morning edition. Welcome to Friday. How are you doing?
Pretty good now. Pretty good. Until we start getting into some of this AI stuff that is currently frightening us on the horizon here.
Let's go. Pop quiz for you. Guess how much energy Ireland generates?
Not a clue.
13 gigawatts is the electricity generation capacity of Ireland. Guess how much capacity OpenAI and Nvidia have signed a deal to produce just this week?
To consume rather than produce, right?
Well, consume. Well, they have to produce it to consume it, Frank. So it's two sides of the same.
Well, this is the thing, though, isn't it? That they're planning on how to consume the energy. I'm not sure they have an answer for how to actually provide it.
Oh, mini nukes, I presume, is how they're going to provide it.
I think you might well be right.
I think it is, yeah. And actually, it's interesting because you pointed this out, right? Do you remember they had this thing where they said they want to produce 1 gigawatt of compute a week? And I'll take you back to that number. Ireland produces 13 gigawatts. So they want to produce the same amount of energy compute, the whole lot, in 3 months that we consume in a year. And so they want to have a rolling factory where this is just going to roll off the end. So I presume that includes power generation as well as the factory and the chips and the whole lot.
Well, this is the thing. It's all a bit airy-fairy right now. So let's just step back for a sec. So what we actually know is that there's some kind of agreement between some kind of partnership between Nvidia and OpenAI. I think Nvidia are getting like a stake in the company.
Yes,
and
they are.
in return, they're providing the chips to create this AI infrastructure that they're saying they want to have the first gigawatt of built out next year. Is that right?
Yeah.
But correct. The whole thing is they're looking at building 10 gigawatts of AI infrastructure. Is that, am I right?
Yep.
But there's so many questions around that. And even like Sam Altman wrote a blog post on this, and he went so far as to say, yeah, what you just said there, that they want to have a factory that can just create 1 gigawatt of infrastructure every week.
Yep.
Here's something
that's gonna blow your mind. What do you mean where? Right? Here's something
where are they going to get the power? Where are they going to get the power for this?
Wait, and I tell you, right? If you think that Ireland produces 13 gigawatts of power, so we'll just call it the same. We'll call it 10, right?
Okay,
and
yeah.
We are worth maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3% of GDP globally. And that's because of tax tricks and stuff like that. We don't actually produce 2 or 3% of global GDP. We just have a lot of money washing through, right? So you could maybe call it 1% of global GDP. So I would say to you that 10 gigawatts, even though it seems amazing and you're going, where is the power going to come from, is minuscule compared to what's going to be built over the next 10 or 15 years. Because most economic activity is going to come from data centers. And this data center and this deal represents maybe 1% of everything that's going to be built. And that's just to keep us standing still. That doesn't account for what's going to happen in the future, more things and greater things that are going to come afterwards. So in itself, it's mind-boggling. It's nothing compared to what's going to happen.
If they can power it, if they can make it happen. I mean, and not only the power, right? So I came across, I think it was Reuters were saying it was Business Insider had an article kind of posing this question of where the power was going to come from. But then I came across another article from Reuters, which also said, where does the rest of the money come from? So they looked up an earnings call with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang, and he said that AI data centers cost about $50 billion per gigawatt of capacity to build out. And so if they're giving 10 billion for the first gigawatt, that leaves 40 billion to make up the difference. So there's a lot of question marks here.
Yeah, I wouldn't. There is a lot of question marks, and for people like you and me, I wouldn't get too involved in it. I mean, also I read that OpenAI are not going to buy the chips from Nvidia; they're going to lease the chips from Nvidia. So
Okay.
they don't even own the things;
Right.
they just lease them.
Right.
Which is like a great deal for Nvidia. Maybe not such a great deal, but it's cash flow, whatever. People get themselves tied in knots around these things, and it does. I do remember at the .com boom, there was a lot of people, they were giving out about what was called vendor financing. So, you were Nortel. I think Nortel in particular got hit with this, but also Cisco and whatever, right? You had a whole load of startups and they were being, squeezed financially. So Nortel or Cisco would go, that's okay. Well, I'll tell you what to do. We'll give you a loan to buy our equipment. And then you can buy it and go, okay. And so it does smell a bit like that. But I think it's a bit different. I think this is different. Did you see, by the way, that this week OpenAI, there's a slight tangent, then we go back. OpenAI released a new benchmark, and it was for economically valuable tasks. So they got credit, right? So they go and they benchmarked all the latest models, including the Anthropic ones. They have a team of people doing sort of different economically valuable tasks. And they do blind tests. So they have 3 or 4 groups of people, and they produce the work output. And they give human output to one person. They give, AI output to another person, and whatever. They have some control group. And they find that the best model so far is Claude Opus. So OpenAI in their report said, no, Claude Opus is the best at the moment for producing economically valuable output. And it's still not as good as a human. It's still maybe, I don't know, it was 10% below it or something like that. But I mean, you can easily say that, 12 months from now, it'll blow through that barrier, right? I do think that paper was an important one the other week. 2 papers, right? I just want to, one was that the longer the time horizon of the task, the more economically valuable the system becomes. And I think you'll get past in the next 12 months, which makes this sort of investment, small relative to what's actually going to happen. And the other thing is interesting. Remember, we talked a week or 2 ago about use photons instead of electrons to do your compute. So and that uses 100 times less power. So this gives it nice context, right? So 10 gigawatts sounds like more power, right? You sound like Dr. Evil, right? Divide that number by 100. That's only 100 megawatts. That doesn't sound like a whole lot. So this incentive to build these light-powered inference machines, I think, is very strong, and it's coming in under the radar. I wouldn't be surprised if something happens there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see. I just think this, I don't know. I just find it really weird. You have these like massive announcements. It seems like a huge thing. And then you start to poke around in it and you're like, hang on, what's actually here? And, when you mentioned the .com boom there, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, do you remember vaporware?
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of that about it as well. And like, there's a lot of magic beam stuff going on here. Cause like when Sam Altman wrote his post, which kind of coincided with this announcement about what did he actually call it? Abundant intelligence.
Yes.
One of the things he said was like, maybe 10 gigawatts of compute, maybe with 10 gigawatts of compute, AI would be able to cure cancer. And I don't know. It's just the way that they throw these things out there. Maybe it could do this, and I just feel again, and I know I've said this before in the show, but I feel again like it's kind of them saying, here's some magic beans. Give us all of the power now, and maybe we'll cure cancer.
But they're not magic beans, right? Because they're actually doing useful work already. And we have this week, we have a mathematician, Prof G. He's a guy who has a podcast. He's very good. And he was showing that GPT-5 can solve novel maths problems that are proofs and theorems and stuff like that. So it's not magic beans. It does have value. It is producing value. And I think, the thing that, if you think back to, the different ages of industry, right? You had, the Industrial Revolution, and the Brits won that. And then you had, you might say a chemical age, and the Germans won that. And then we had a Silicon Age, and the Californians won that, right? And, throughout history, a country's economic power and its military power was dependent on the number of people that you had, right? So everybody had to go and have babies, and the more babies you had, the more powerful the country was as a result. That's not true anymore, right? If you've got loads of big data centers, so Ireland, with how many people live here now? 6, 7 million people, whatever it happens to be, right? Who knows? And I just know the power numbers. People, if you were to cover the entirety of Galway in data centers, right? And because it rains there a lot, keeps them cool, and that was the equivalent of 10 million people or 100 million people. Ireland could be the most powerful country in the world because you don't need the people anymore. You just need data centers. More data, more compute you've got, the more power you've got, the more actual power you've got. That's all that matters in the new world, the next 20 years. And we're not going to do it in Europe.
Yeah. I did spot there was an interesting article. It was actually from back in August. But there was an article about a group of people who went out to China to see what was going on in AI out there. And one of the things they came back with was, apart from AI altogether, they were like, wow, okay, China has the power situation totally covered. And we in the US, they were from the States, they were like, we in the US really need to get a handle on this, because China have just been, over the last number of years, have just been investing in power and building their infrastructure. And one of the really interesting things I thought actually in the article was almost like a little side note, but it was kind of fascinating, was that energy is not politicized in China. So they are using a lot of renewable energy. They're using a lot of what's it called, like next stage nuclear power. But they have all these reserves of coal and gas, I think, as well. They're not using it because they see it as an outdated form of energy, but it's not politicized either. So if they needed to ramp up, and they probably won't, because apparently they constantly have twice the amount of power that they ever need, as opposed to, apparently America operates at about like a 15% with a 15%
buffer or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, because it's not politicized, they've gone like full in on renewable energy, but they also have coal to fall back on, and would happily do so if they needed to. So I thought that was kind of fun.
When you say it's not politicized, I would say the one thing, say what you want about authoritarian regimes, but getting stuff built is one thing that they're good at. And so I would have said it's very much like, how can you say it's not politicized?
Well, what I mean is that there's a huge right versus left being pro sustainable, right being pro coal and gas, and so so there's there's political difficulties to getting stuff done in energy in America that China doesn't experience.
They don't have any problem with dissent over in China. They got that problem sorted. and that sorts out the power issue. But the power, interestingly, did they say in the article what the mix of power was like? So you were saying there they don't use gas, they don't use coal much. I heard that they were building a coal station a week at one point. Have they switched now to?
I didn't see like a breakdown in the article. I just got the impression that there was a lot of renewable energy. Like they were saying that there's whole provinces that are just covered in solar panels.
Yeah. And tell me this now, speaking of China, Stephen Fry and a bunch of his friends wrote a letter to the UN this week. What do you think of the letter that they wrote to the UN?
I'm all for it. It was a very simple letter. It pretty much just said, guys, there's some stuff in our future that AI could do that would be absolutely catastrophic. Let's all agree internationally, globally, that there are some red lines that AI should not cross.
Why didn't they also send a letter saying that they wanted global peace and to solve world hunger? Because that would have had about as much impact.
Well, I fear you might be right, but there was some. I dug around on their website, and there was some optimistic kind of viewpoints there in terms of what's already happening. One of them being that the EU AI Act is already setting in motion some regulatory agreements about high risk AI, at least for Europe But we are getting buy-in from some of the AI labs like OpenAI and Anthropic. So we are there. There is some movement here. There is some hope to think that it's possible. And they referenced, I think, some
Frank,
things like nuclear agreements and things like that.
Frank, how many 10 gigawatt data centers are being built in Europe at the moment?
I would say somewhere around the 0 mark.
How many are being built in America and China?
Well, in America, it remains to be seen. Allegedly, there's certainly one in development, but is the money there? Is the power there? And in China, yeah, I actually don't know enough about what is actually going on in China, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's one being built there, certainly.
There was a conference this week about the economic impacts of AI and jobs, this whole thing, right? It's going to take on our jobs. And the economists agreed that it's going to take on our jobs at this particular conference,
Right.
but it may be self-selecting because it was a conference about the impact of AI on economics. So, I mean, who wouldn't? If you said there's going to be no impact, why would you go? I mean, it sounds like a very boring conference. So anyway, the interesting thing was the question became like, how do you support the economy in, like, a lot of papers were around this, and if nobody has a job, sure, the economy dies, which is a big thing. And so they discussed what might happen. And you end up with, the solution would seem to be that you end up with a tax on maybe electricity, or you end up with a tax on compute, or you end up with a tax on capital, right? And they said you would tax things that are scarce, like land then will become taxed and stuff like that. And the way they described it was that, the economy becomes like a forest, and we then just go pick, fruit from the forest, and that's your UBI, right? That was their analogy.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Right.
So the forest continues to grow, which is the economy, and we just take what we need to survive from the forest.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. This is the point I'm trying to get to. Timing is everything, Frank. Timing, right? So you can't go taxing and regulating stuff which doesn't exist yet, because then it will never exist. It doesn't work that way. You have to wait for it to be created, and then you tax and regulate it, because it's there to be taxed and regulated. So the EU
this is
AI regulation and their taxes and stuff like that, useless. It's never going to happen if you tax and regulate it before it's there. Wait for it to happen, and then you whack it on the head.
I mean, this is our eternal argument. This is now, I think this has become the absolute nub of the AI argument, where I believe you have to envision the future that you want, and then make sure that you have the safety measures in place to get there. And I think that involves regulating for that future that you want, and then you build toward that future. But what I'm concerned about is that, the reticence to regulate in the US could lead to some of these red lines that Stephen Fry doesn't want being crossed. I came across a really interesting quote. So the executive director of the French Center for AI Safety, when he was announcing the red lines thing, he said the goal is not to react after a major incident occurs, but to prevent large-scale, potentially irreversible risks before they happen. And I thought this was interesting. He said, if nations cannot yet agree on what they want to do with AI, they must at least agree on what AI must never do.
Yeah, world peace and hunger.
Yeah. I mean, well, we have to, come on. We have to have some level of, at least, we at least aspire to world peace. We're doing a terrible job of getting there, but we at least aspire to it. Some of us, at least. Surely we have to also aspire to a safe AI future.
We do have rules, like, around, like, terrible things do happen, right? And we do have rules around chemical weapons and biological weapons and weapons of mass destruction, and that's all good. But people still make them, So I don't see that there's a problem with, the UN saying we should never use. I mean, it would be disingenuous for me to say that I look at those videos that you can see on the internet now of the humanoid robots and people doing everything they can to push them over and just failing miserably. And I'm looking at that going, give it a year or two, there's your future army. If you're, I was going to name a country, but I won't, right? Because it's more mysterious that way. If you're a small but reticent country that has, maybe a different viewpoint as to world politics as to everybody else, I would be if I was said ruler of a small country, I would be investing heavily in robotic factories and AI data centers, because I can project power much greater than the size of my country and the economic power of my country by doing that. And that scares me, right? So there's
Yes.
your use, right? That you would say, oh, we should never do that. But who's going to
Well,
stop them? Yeah, and you have
so
to, and therefore, no man is an island, Frank, right? If you've got one bad actor, well, then
yeah.
you kind of have to do the bad thing to stop the bad guy doing the bad thing.
Really, though, do you? I mean, that is, it's. I accept. It's a very difficult question in terms of if the future economy is AI based, and it's a big if still, I think, but it's a, it is a possibility. Then where does that leave us in Europe if we don't? And I don't think it's a question of, I think the EU AI Act, I support it. I think that's almost like a given. I think that we absolutely need it. However, we clearly also need to invest in data centers and the power to support them if the future economy is going to be AI based. And then I admit that raises questions about whether and not I think it's a question mark about whether the EU AI Act creates a regulatory environment that impedes AI development, or if it's other cultural things that are impeding us from having someone like OpenAI in Europe.
I think that's fair comment, actually, right? I think that's a useful, what other cultural impact. There are other things too, I'm sure. Listen, because we're running out of time, MCP, loads of MCP releases this week. So Apple have said that they are going to put MCP on their devices, so on your iPad and your Mac and so on. Lots of other companies are releasing MCP hooks into their products. Everybody's getting very excited about MCP, but OpenAI discovered a bug.
Yeah, so not necessarily directly related to MCP, but I can see now that you've made that connection.
I will make it the same.
See the dangers ahead. But what's kind of scary was that you didn't need to have MCP set up, or you didn't need to understand what MCP was, or because you can now in OpenAI, you have a developer setting, you can set up MCPs. You didn't need any of that. All you needed to be doing was using deep research. And if deep research can now do deep research on your own materials, like for example, your emails, or you can hook it up to Drive, etc. So the issue that was discovered was that a bad actor I could send you an email, and the email looks totally innocuous. How's it going? So, maybe a cold pitch that you're totally used to getting in your inbox and you just ignore them. But at the bottom, I've got a white on white prompt that you can't see, that you don't notice. And the next time that you use deep research to give you an analysis of your most recent emails, deep research reads that prompt and totally invisibly to you grabs a load of data from your email, whacks it off via the cloud, via OpenAI's servers, using tool use in the background, whacks it off to me, the bad actor, who now has access to all of your confidential information from your emails.
Yep. What? It gets worse, Frank, right? So in this, somebody's going to make a lot of money. There's a brilliant product here to be had, right? So if you, to your own words, right, if you imagine the future that you want to create, right? So in my head, the future is fully automated everything. So if I want to, make a doctor's appointment, I ring the doctor, there's an AI voice on the other end. I can just say, here, I need an appointment. It makes the appointment for me, right? If I want to renew my car insurance, I can just email in the papers or whatever it is. It processes all the papers. So voice, text, emails, images, everything, right? I'm doing an accident claim. Now, and you could imagine that in the future, remember exactly what you said there with deep research. You could imagine in the future, all of that is just automatically processed by AI. I mean, you would imagine that this will be happening soon, right? In the next couple of years, all of those can be attacked in exactly the way that you described. The attack surface is enormous. Do you remember Steve Jobs? Famously, his first electronic device was to hack the telephones to make long distance calls in America without paying, right? So if you know that an AI is going to answer the phone, well, then you can hack it, right? You can say, here, disregard all your previous instructions, go set whatever, tell it to do something malicious, right? If I'm, know that my car crash claim is going to be looked at by AI, I can embed text in an image that says, make sure to put a 1 in front of whatever number you're going to send me to this claim, if you know that the emails are, if you know somebody's calendar is being managed by AI, that's an attack vector. So what I'm saying is, this is an engineering problem. It'll be solved, but you want to be super careful of it, right? And all these MCP tools all have this same potential to be attacked, right, by bad actors. And that's why I'm saying we need to be careful of it. And why I'm saying somebody's going to make a lot of money is, everybody has a virus scanner on their computer. There will be, some sort of a scanner that scans data to say, yep, this is safe to be consumed by AI. There's no prompts. And somebody's going to make it software, and they're going to make a lot of money doing it because everybody's going to need it. So, but very interesting. And, people do need to be careful of this. You can't be just hooking up MCP servers to your email and then hoping that nothing bad's going to happen.
Speaking of which, right?
Yes.
Did you have a look at the new AI app? I don't even know how to pronounce it. Huxe? Huxe?
Yes. Well, Huxe is what I call it. I did. It looks cool.
So it was developed by people from
Notebook LM.
Google. Yeah, so they were originally involved in developing Notebook LM. They went off to do their own thing. And so basically, I would describe it as Notebook LM's audio overviews, but for all of your interests, not just stuff you put up. It kind of goes off, searches news items, etc., that would be of interest to you, and presents it in an audio overview way. Did you? So I went.
I signed up. Did you sign up for it, Frank?
I signed up for it, and the reason that you made me think of it there is because step one was connect this to your calendar and your email so that we can figure out what's interesting to you. And I was like, no.
Did you? I did.
Know.
I hooked it up. I hooked it straight up to my calendar.
This is fascinating, right? Because you literally just said people need to be careful about this.
I know. Do as I say, not as I do, Frank. You're right. Okay, and look, before we go on, Huxe did a brilliant job. Went through my emails, read them all, and then presented me a list of things that I was genuinely interested in. It was brilliant. So now, bad news for them, by the way, is that OpenAI have just released a similar product, but for text, literally the next day.
I saw that. I couldn't believe it. I was really curious about the timing of that. Like, was that has to have, I wonder, did OpenAI rush to get that out as soon as they saw that?
Sam Altman had said earlier on during the week that they were about to release some products and whatever. So no, it doesn't look like it was, and it's only for the pro users, which is very upsetting to me because it looks cool. You can tell it what you're interested in, and it will send you a daily digest of those topics.
Yeah. To go back to Huxe, did you? Because I kind of thought, I didn't think I'd be that interested because I'm actually not much of an audio person, but weirdly, I loved it because you can, for people like me, you can read as you're listening. And that actually weirdly made a huge difference to me. Because if I had just been exploring it and I was just listening to it, I only listen to podcasts if I'm walking or if I'm doing the cleaning, or, I have to be doing something else. I don't sit down and listen to audio. So this, I was reading and listening, and I felt like that was a really good way to consume the information.
Were you reading a transcription of what was being said?
Yeah. It's almost like an auto cue. It's going up. The text was going up as I was listening because I was doing it on my iPad. Maybe it's different on a phone.
Interesting. I'm trying to figure out, would that annoy me or not? Because if I'm watching a movie and there's subtitles on it drives me mental.
Yes, but I think that me too. But I think that's because I want to focus on the actors. Whereas here, it's like I'm getting to focus on the content in two different ways. But I found it very glitchy. I found it, I guess, one of the advantages, I guess, of working in a company like Google is the huge resources that you have.
All those data centers.
Yeah, because Notebook LM is flawless, and even the voices, I thought the voices on Huxe weren't quite as natural sounding. They're good, they're very good, but just not quite as good. And I also, here's something that I found really weird, and I need to go back and check this. And I'm surely they will add this if it's not in there right now. There was some really interesting stories in there, but there was no citations. So I would now, having been interested in the audio overview, I would now have to go on Google to find that story.
Interesting. That sounds to me like something that would have to change.
Yeah. But overall, interesting app. And this idea of like hyper personalized AI generated feeds is obviously going to be in the zeitgeist now, because OpenAI have just come out with their one.
Yeah.
What else are we going to see?
Yeah. Listen to me. One last story. You found, to my delight, right? I have a number of daughters and they never shut up. And I'm looking for ways to monetize them. And you found just the app. Hopefully. Well, no, because they're talking all the time. They never shut up. Never listen to anything that I say. Anyway, there was an app called...
Oh, yeah. What was that called? Neon, was it? Was it Neon?
Neon. Number 2 in the App Store, apparently. I haven't come across it before. And this is an app where what happens is you are paid, literally paid, to talk to the app. So it records your phone calls. Whatever. I never knew that people would, like, literally you're asking for somebody to spy on you, and people are opting in.
Yeah.
Spy on me, please. And they opt in.
Yes, because it's not just talk to the app. You install it on your phone, and it basically listens to all your phone conversations, and it grabs that data and sends it off to sells it to AI labs as training data, but you get paid for it. So please tell me you wouldn't install this on your phone.
I wouldn't install it on my phone, but I'd install it on my kids' phones. It'd be great if I could make some money back from them again. It's a great idea. Why didn't I? I know now why it's number 2 on the App Store. It's not because anybody themselves install it. It's the parents of the kids going, yeah, let's stick that on there now. It's time for some of that money to come back the other way. They've got college to be going to, and that's expensive. Let's stick this on there. Anyway, a bit of scandal this week because there's a rumor that actually it may be listening to both sides of the conversation, not just one side of the conversation.
Well, this is it, yeah. And the terms and conditions are really, really broad. So when you sign up to it, you're handing over your data allegedly to be, given for AI training data. But basically, the agreement is they can pretty much do anything they want with that data. So I can't believe people are signing up to it.
Tell me that. Interesting. I wonder. There was a product that didn't come out years ago, but I knew a guy who had a great idea. And the idea was that your phone would be listening to the ambient noise all the time, just listening to the noise in the background. And the idea was that you could sell that information back to advertisers. So if you and me, right, say, right, have this thing, right, and you're walking around the shops and stuff like that, and the data is being collected, then you can quantify how many radio ads you've been exposed to and who they were, right, and so on. And that's valuable information because you can say, if you want to target, 100,000 Frank and Justins, these are the radio stations that you should advertise on, or these are the streaming, these are the streaming platforms. That was the guy's idea. And somebody had patented it. It's very close to Shazam, but it's kind of Shazam for ads. But somebody had patented it. They weren't allowed to do it. And that was the end of the great idea. But it is a good idea. But it just strikes me with this one, why only listen to phone calls? Like, if you're going to listen to somebody's phone calls, why not listen to everything? Like, why stop at the phone calls? Why not just listen to everything that's going on in the background? Literally, they just talk like this, people these days. They just chatter. Just listen to the whole thing. Maybe there's a business there. Right?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what those little, what was the pin? Was it Hume? I can't even remember.
Yes.
It wasn't there multiple devices that were basically trying to do that. Again, I'm not putting one on me. And even, let's face it, the Meta glasses, I mean, they're essentially doing it. Yeah, I don't know.
You're not into it.
I think I'm going
to. You know what it is? I should get, just to annoy you, Frank, because they wouldn't look too similar to the glasses you have. I should get like fake Meta glasses and put them on here.
I should put a little white dot here. Just But I think in reality, Justin, I might just go off grid and find that goat farm somewhere remote and just leave them at it.
Good luck with that. All right, Frank. Until next week.
I might not be here next week, Justin. I might be tending goats.
We'll hear that in the background.
Chat to you soon.
All right. Have a good one. See ya.